Detroit Lions have begun their roster cuts today, and all I can say is, what are we doing? Brad? What are we doing? We're gonna go ahead and get straight into it. This is according to Pride of Detroit. I believe at the recording of this video at 7 o'clock Central Time, the Detroit Lions have made around 15 roster cuts. I believe they have like 21 or something left to go. So let's go ahead and get right into it. We'll start off with the cuts that happened first in the morning, and then the most recent at the recording of this video. So to start off the day, the Lions ended up releasing linebacker Anthony Pittman. Now let me get this out the way too. When I say waived or released means if a player has 4 or more years of experience, they do not have to go through waivers. Waivers are a thing where if you are less than 4 years, if you have 3 years or less of experience playing in the National Football, you have to go through a waivers, which every team in the NFL gets to make a decision if they want you, and they can claim you no matter if the player wants to sign with you or not. The team gets to make that decision, not the player. When a player is released, they immediately hit free agency, and they can sign with the team of their choice. That's not the case with waivers. If a player passes through waivers and no team claims them, then they can sign with whatever team they want. But they have to go through the waiver process. Now, Anthony Pittman has been in the league for a while now, 6 or 7 years. He does not have to go through waivers. So he is now a free agent, free to sign with any team. When it comes to Anthony Pittman, I don't hate the move. I'm surprised he was the first player to get released. Usually the first player to get released, it seems like every year is a bigger player that you wouldn't expect to be the first guy to get released. And it was again this year with Anthony Pittman. Now, hopefully Pittman's back on the practice squad. He's one of my for sure guys who went back on the practice squad this year. I thought he played very well in the preseason. I thought he could even sneak his way into the 53 man as one of the last guys, but he ends up getting released. Hopefully he's brought back on the practice squad. Now you see the second one. Yes, you see it on the thumbnail. Hendon Hooker has been waived. First reported by Mike Garafolo. Hendon Hooker, time as a Detroit Lion is over. The former third-round pick in 2023 is no longer with the Detroit Lions. Now, this was expected after what Dan Campbell said about maybe you just needed to change the scenery, and after how he's been playing in the preseason. And I totally agree. I think Hendon Hooker needs to change the scenery. And I just think his time in Detroit needed to come to an end, and it looks like it has. It looks like he is going to find a home somewhere else. I highly doubt the Lions bring him back on the practice squad. I think there already was reports from like Gary Merov or something that he will find a new place somewhere else. He will find a new change of scenery, which makes me think he will get claimed, or he's just not going to re-sign on the practice squad. But, and let me put this out too, you cannot be demoted to the practice squad. You have to be released. So, like, rest of the guys that are on the roster, or like Hendon Hooker, where you're like, why didn't we just place him on the practice squad? You can't do that. You have to put him on waivers or release him before you can actually put him on the practice squad. So, Hendon Hooker can return to the Detroit Lions, even though it's probably not going to happen Wednesday at the earliest. So, there's that. I wish the best for Hendon Hooker. His time as a Detroit Lion is now over. It was a miss by Brad Holmes, but I'm not going to critique the pick at all. The guy had a lot of potential. The guy had the potential to be an elite backup. It is what it is. The guy should have been a first-round pick at the time coming out of the draft. Obviously, now looking back at it, that would have been a horrible pick for a team. But at the time, he probably should have been a first-round pick. It just didn't work out. Hopefully, he does get a change of scenery. Hopefully, he finds a role on the practice squad or somewhere else as a quarterback 3. Probably not going to be able to get a quarterback 2 job, but as a quarterback 3 somewhere. I'm wishing the best for Hendon Hooker. But his time as a Detroit Lion has come to an end, and it wasn't missed by Brad Holmes, but I'm not going to critique the pick too much at all. We're on to the third player. This was pretty much immediately reported after Hendon Hooker got released. Tom Kennedy has been released per Dave Burkett. This one we expected. I mean, it still sucks for Tom Kennedy. He's never, I don't believe, made an initial 53-man roster. He's been with the Lions every single year of his career. Has not made the Lions initial 53-man roster. It's kind of like Dan Skipper in the past, but Dan Skipper didn't make the Lions initial 53 last year, so he ended that streak. We'll see if Tom Kennedy can ever end that streak or not. But he does not make a 53-man roster. Was very quiet this preseason. Usually pretty active in the preseason, but was quiet this year in the preseason. I still expect the Lions to bring him back in the practice squad, but for right now, he is now a free agent, but I expected it. The fourth player we had, this was almost immediately as well after Tom Kennedy. The Lions released UDFA safety Ian Kennelly per Aaron Wilson. This one, I was up the year. Some people had him making the 53 as the 4 safety. I really didn't see that. I don't think he made enough flashy plays in the preseason to do that. I think you give him a year to develop. He could definitely be a decent safety 4, but I think he's going to need some developmental work. Came from a really small school. He's just going to need some developmental work. I'm fine with this. I expect him to clear through waivers, and I do think he will be brought back on the practice squad. But for right now, this was the right move, in my opinion, to waive Ian Kennelly. So far, Anthony Pittman's been released, Hooker's been waived, Kennedy's been released, and Ian Kennelly has been waived. Now, Mitchell Agude was the next person to get cut. This one, very expected. I don't think anybody really had him making the 53-man roster. He's one of the worst pass rushers I've ever seen. He's a decent player when it comes to the run game and special teams. He can drop back in coverage if needed. But when it comes to rushing the passer, he's one of the worst pass rushers I've ever seen. Like, honestly, I don't even think I've ever seen the guy actually put a pressure on the quarterback before, and he's a defensive end. But I don't know if Mitchell Agude comes back to the team or not. It's really just if the Lions value him at all on special teams. So we'll see. But if I was Detroit, I would not bring him back. I'd let him get a home somewhere else. Maybe bring him down to the UFL, see if he can develop some pass rush moves there. But I think the Lions need to personally move off of him. So I think this was the right move, but I could very well see him back. That was per Adam Schefter. And then the next one. This is where I'm going to start getting a little bit heated here. The Lions made a shocking release. They released Dan Skipper. First reported by Justin Rogers. Now, Mitchell Agude was waived. Can't remember if I said that. Dan Skipper, obviously been in the league forever. He is released. Not subject to waivers. But what are we doing, Brad Holmes? He's got to be cooking or something. Right now, our new backup tackle behind Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell is now Giovanni Manu. Apparently, when Justin Rogers reported that, there's rumors going around that the Lions really, really like Jamarco Jones, but Justin Rogers didn't think that had anything to do with Dan Skipper's release, or they didn't expect Dan Skipper to get released, even with those rumors going around. So maybe Jamarco Jones is going to be the backup tackle number 1. Really don't know how I feel about that. I don't think he played great this preseason, but that could explain why he did not play the last preseason game. Unless if I'm tripping, but I swear I did not see him on the field the last preseason game, so that could explain why. But I absolutely hate this. I hate this. The guy barely had any guaranteed money. There's no risk with this. It's just like the fact that he's been with the Lions for so many years. I think he's going on 6 years now he's been with the Lions, bouncing on and off practice squads. I fully expect him to be back on the practice squad. Apparently he had a rough training camp. But it's like, really, we're going to get rid of him in favor of a guy of Giovanni Manu, who's really not developed that well right now, and Jamarco Jones, in my opinion, who's struggled. I don't like the move at all. I really, really don't. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm pretty sure everybody had him making the 53 man. I do not like this move. He better be back on the practice squad. Maybe they're just shooting some roster moves, and they end up placing a couple guys on IR, and he ends up coming back to the 53. They did that a couple years ago with Darren Fells. Well, multiple years ago now with Darren Fells. I think it was C.J. Moore at the time. They did that. They ended up releasing Darren Fells and C.J. Moore, I think, on cutdowns or some point in the season. And then they placed some guys on IR, and they ended up coming back. So maybe that's what they're doing here with Dan Skipper, but that's what I hope they're doing because I absolutely hate that move. The Lions, I think next, they released that it's not on Pride of Detroit for some reason. I don't think they saw it, but I think it was reported by Aaron Wilson or Dave Burkett or somebody. Mason Miller, the UDFA tackle from North Dakota State, he's also been waived. So Mason Miller, I think it was Aaron Wilson reported it, said there's a good chance he ends up coming back to the practice squad if he clears waivers, which he 100% will. Did not have a great preseason. But Mason Miller's time right now as a Detroit Lions has come to an end. Not really a shocker there. Maybe makes the practice squad, but nobody really had to make it the 53. Neither did I. Next one we got is Jackson Meeks. Now, this is my second one out of the 3 that I really do not like. The third one we'll get to in a little bit. The first one was Dan Skipper. This was per Nolan Bianchi. This one I about lost my mind. Now, I predicted Jackson Meeks to win the wide receiver 6 role. I did. However, I said it was going to come down to special teams, and I think Dominic Lovett arguably had the edge over Jackson Meeks because Dominic Lovett is a draft pick. And I legitimately think that's what it came down to. I don't think it's the fact that Dominic Lovett has the special team ability that Jackson Meeks doesn't, because Jackson Meeks proved in the preseason. I'm not saying preseason means everything, but he looks so much better in preseason at the actual receiver position than Dominic Lovett. So Dominic Lovett now has definitely pretty much won the wide receiver 6 role. We'll get to a couple other wide receivers who have gotten released or waived today as well. I think there's only one more after this. But Jackson Meeks right now, he's going to get claimed in my opinion. I would be shocked if he passes through waivers. I'm pretty sure he was top 3, top 4 in the league in receiving yards, and he had a couple touchdowns as well in there. I hate this move. He's going to get claimed. And I think it lowers the chance now of Zadarius Smith coming back, which is another problem we'll get to later in this video. And it's the last cut of the day where I'm actually going to lose my mind, and I'm going to talk about Zadarius Smith. Next guy we have is Nick Whiteside. He has been waived. I thought he was just going to get flat out released. I didn't know he's been in the league for only a couple years. Nick Whiteside has been waived, so he'll pass through waivers and probably revert to the practice squad. We'll see, though. I doubt he gets picked up on waivers. Struggled in the last preseason game. There's a chance he doesn't come back to the practice squad, but if I had to bet, he'd probably be back in the practice squad. That was per Rich Silva. The next one we had was Luke Barku. The Lions picked him up a couple days ago. I think he has also been waived. I thought he was going to get released because I thought he played in 2020, which would be his 5th year going on here, but apparently he has been waived. That was per Mike Payton. So his time as Detroit Lions come to an end. I highly doubt the Detroit Lions bring him back on the practice squad, but you never know. The next one we got here is Jacob Sailors. Now this one's no surprise. Kind of angry when this one happened, but this is no surprise. Hopefully, Dan Campbell speak very highly of Jacob Sailors. So hopefully Jacob Sailors is back on the practice squad. He better be, because right now if anybody else comes in on the practice squad, I'm not going to be too happy. Jacob Sailors I thought looked really good in the preseason. And Sione Vaki is obviously dealing with the injury. Could get placed on IR depending on the severity of the injury to start the season. So we really are going to need Jacob Sailors potentially at some point during the season. So hopefully Jacob Sailors, I think he will pass through waivers. So it's really just going to be a matter of fact, do the Lions bring back in the practice squad or not? And I hope they do, and I think they will. And the next one, I think might be the final one. No, we got a couple more here. The Lions release DB, safety slash cornerback. I would say it's more of a safety, Eric Howlett. That was per Aaron Wilson. This one surprising me. I actually had Eric Howlett winning the safety 4 job and making the 53-man roster. It was really between him or Lauren Strickland, really, for that safety 4 spot. I thought they were going to go with Eric Howlett, though, because the fact that Eric Howlett can play cornerback and the Lions are lacking in cornerback depth right now. So I thought that was the reason why Eric Howlett was going to make the team, just because you get kind of a 2-for-1 there. But he has been waived, so I'm assuming he'll be the same thing there. If he passes through waivers, I will 100% expect the Lions to bring him back on the practice squad. So I would say out of all these guys who have been waived, Eric Howlett is up there for the most likely to return to the practice squad. But a little bit surprised they did not make the initial 53. And we got a very small one here. Tight end Gunnar Oaks brought him from the UFL. I believe he's on the Panthers last season. Per Nolan Bianchi has also, I believe, been waived, but I highly doubt he signs with an NFL team or even returns to the Lions practice squad. I would be shocked. Did really nothing throughout the preseason. And I think this is the final one. No, we got one more after this. My guy, unfortunately, UDFA wide receiver from UMass, Jacoby Keeney James. I spelled his name wrong. Per Nolan Bianchi has been waived. This one hurts. I mean, I saw it coming. Obviously, the guy didn't even have a reception throughout the preseason. Had 2 targets, no receptions, and the guy had a muff punt. The guy was clearly not going to make the team, but he won't make the practice squad. But the best for Jacoby Keeney James. This is one of the 3 players that I was really rooting for that was on the bubble to make the Lions roster, and who I thought could make an impact if they did end up making the roster. Those 3 guys were Nate Lynn, Jacoby Keeney James, and Maurice Norris. Obviously, we know what's happened with Maurice Norris, and he still could make the 53 and make an impact at some point, but right now I'm not going to really speak on that. That's going to be up in the air, so I'm not going to say if I'm right or wrong on that one. And then Jacoby Keeney James, obviously I was wrong on that one, unfortunately. And then we'll get to the last one here in a little bit. But Jacoby Keeney James, wishing the best to you, man. Hope you can get on a team somewhere else, but just didn't work out here in Detroit. It's unfortunate. But moving on to the next one. That was my guy. Kind of hurts there, but moving on to the next one. We got Deion Jackson. Now, Deion Jackson has also been waived, I want to say. The Lions won't bring him back. I'd be shocked. Really didn't play that much during the preseason. Didn't play at a high level either. Wasn't bad, but just didn't play at a high level. As per Dave Burkett. I'd be shocked if he returns to the practice squad. He'll clear waivers. I would not be surprised if he ends up signing with the practice squad somewhere else, but I think here in Detroit it's extremely unlikely. And I'm almost certain this is the final one now. No, it's not. Okay, the last one's definitely the final one. The Lions have also released, I believe, Miles Adams has been released by Dave Burkett. I actually almost expected Miles Adams to make the 53. I didn't have him making the 53, but after what Dan Campbell said, having multiple good days throughout training camp and thought he played decent throughout the preseason, I almost expected Miles Adams to make the 53. And if not, make the practice squad. I do think Miles Adams does end up coming back to the practice squad, but you never know. Don't hate this move, though. I mean, I didn't have him making the 53. I think he's a good deep depth defensive tackle, good practice squad defensive tackle. I don't see much more than that, though. There's not a lot of potential I see in Miles Adams. I think he's just going to be what he is now, which is a depth defensive tackle, practice squad defensive tackle who can fill in for a guy if needed, but it's not going to be ideal. And the next guy, I believe, is the guy that I'm going to get riled up for a little bit here. Yes, it is. Oh, boy. With the 96th pick in the draft, the Detroit Lions selected Broderick Martin in the 3rd round in 2023, nose tackle, and he has been waived per Mike Payton. So Broderick Martin's time as a Detroit Lion has come to an end. This is 100% Brad Holmes' worst draft pick he has made as Detroit Lions general manager. You could say it's Levi Onwuzurike. You could say it's Josh Paschal, but in my opinion, you're wrong. Levi Onwuzurike, yeah, he really struggled his first 3 years, couldn't stay healthy. Last year, played very well, almost lived up to that second-round pick. I still wouldn't say he's lived up to the second-round pick, but after last year, I think he's been a decent player, kind of like a Fatu Melifonwu. That's kind of how I look at it. They both had one really good year out of the 4-year contract. Well, I do think if Fatu Melifonwu lived up to the 3rd-round pick, because he was drafted a little bit later than what Levi was. I don't want to say Levi lived up to the 2nd-round pick, but he's not a bad player. Josh Paschal, I don't know about Josh Paschal. 2nd-round pick, he's definitely not lived up to the 2nd-round pick, but he's a decent player. Broderick Martin, I think, played in maybe 5 games for us in his NFL career. Played in 2 good preseason games this year, but also had 2 extremely bad ones. One to start the year in the Hall of Fame game, and the one to end the year versus the Houston Texans. And he had 2 in the middle versus the Dolphins and the Falcons that he played pretty well. But he just wasn't consistent enough. Now, Mike Payton, when he put that post out, said that there's already teams interested that are thinking about picking him up on waivers. So it looks like Broderick Martin might get claimed, and I'm honestly hoping he does for the sake of him and the hope that he's not back on this team. But the 2 2023 3rd-round picks are no longer back on Detroit. It's crazy because the Lions had a generational first, 4 picks in the draft with Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, and Brian Branch. And then, the worst imaginable 4 next picks. And Broderick Martin, Hendon Hooker, Colby Sorsdahl, and Antoine Green. 4 who are no longer on the team. Colby Sorsdahl is still on the team, but he'll probably end up getting released here with an injury settlement probably tomorrow. But Broderick Martin's time as a Detroit Lion has come to an end. That is 100% the right move. And here is the last one, ladies and gentlemen. This is the most recent one since I have made this video who's been waived. Waived, yes. Nate Lynn has been waived, first reported by Dave Burkett. What are we doing? What are we doing, Brad? This makes no sense whatsoever. Nate Lynn was a top 3, probably a top 3 defensive end in the whole entire preseason. His stats might not say that, but when you watch the film, he was probably a top 3 defensive end within all preseason. Had only 1 sack, got a lot of pressures, though. It was decent in the run game. He was fantastic. I'm pretty sure he was top 3 every single week for us throughout the 4 weeks we played during the preseason. Pretty sure he was top 3 every single week for us. I know I don't really care about PFF grades like that, but he was top 3 every single week, at least, if I'm not mistaken, for the 4 weeks of the preseason in PFF grades on the defensive side of the ball. And I believe he was 2nd on defense last week. This makes no sense. Nate Lynn is also going to get claimed, in my opinion. Him and Jackson Meeks, they're both going to get claimed. It looks like Broderick Martin will get claimed as well from what Mike Payton was saying, which will, in my opinion, leave 3 players from the Detroit Lions to be claimed. Now, when it comes to Jackson Meeks, I did read that the Lions will most likely bring him back on the practice squad if he clears waivers. I think that was the initial report, is that the Lions do expect him, if Jackson Meeks does pass waivers, they do expect to bring him back on the practice squad. But that's not going to happen, in my opinion. There's no way after the preseason. I absolutely hate this Nate Lynn move. I absolutely despise it. Amon Hosni is going to most likely get placed on IR to start the season, missing the first 4 games. Josh Pascal probably going to be still placed on the NFI list, missed the first 4 games. So then, ladies and gentlemen, this is your current edge rusher room right now at the recording of this video. Hutchinson, great. Davenport, you know he's going to get hurt week 1, probably within the first 2 plays. Al-Quadin Muhammad then is your edge 3 and will become your edge 2 after Davenport gets hurt after 2 plays. And then guess who your edge 4 is? Your only other edge on the roster then right now. Isaac Ukwu. That is your edge 4. And you know how I feel about Isaac Ukwu. Had 1 good preseason game this year. And he might have a good game. But besides that, he is extremely inaccurate. Or excuse me, extremely inconsistent getting to the quarterback. I better see a top defensive end on the market. Please be Zadarius Smith. But a top defensive end on the market right now, Jadeveon Clowney. And I want to throw this out there. I know it wasn't going to happen, and I don't even know if I wanted it to happen. Real talk. Trey Hendrickson has agreed to a contract extension with the Cincinnati Bengals on a 1-year, $30 million contract extension. I think it's technically 16, with this 14 being added from what it already was. But Trey Hendrickson is now off the table. Jadeveon Clowney and Zadarius Smith, top edgers on the market. There'll probably be some good edge rushers that get released here within the next day. But if we do not bring in a top free agent edge on the market, specifically those 2 or some other top edge that gets released, we're going to have a problem. That edge room looks like an 0-16 edge room when you take out Hutch. One of the worst I've seen in a minute. That's worse than our 2021. Arguably, that's worse than our 2021 edge room if you take out Aiden Hutchinson. It really, really is. Because you know Davenport's going to get hurt. Muhammad's going to get you probably at max 5 sacks. And then you got Isaac Ukwu. So, but that is the Lions roster moves. I believe we're down to 76. I believe we're down to 76 now on the roster. 76 or 75. So we have to make now 21 cuts. I believe. Let's count here real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And then if you add Mason Miller, there's been 18 players who have been cut. So there's, according to Pride Detroit, there are 74 players on the roster. That's not including Mason Miller, though, who they didn't add. So there are 73 players left on the Lions roster, which means we have 20 more cuts we have to make, which means we made, let's see, 18 roster cuts today. So we have a little bit over half tomorrow to make, and we have to get down to 53 by 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And this is our current roster right now. Jared Goff and Kyle Allen at quarterback. Kyle Allen has won the quarterback 2 job officially. Running back, that is going to be a running back room. Nobody else, I guarantee, would be brought in unless the Sione back does get placed on IR, but I do not expect him to. These are your wide receivers. I'm shocked Malik Taylor has not been cut yet. This is your tight end room. Shocked as well that Steven Stellanos has not been cut. This is your offensive tackle room. Again, Mason Miller has been cut, so he's been waived, so do not worry about that one. He is not on the roster. Don't know why they've not updated that. Interior offensive line, everybody's still there. Defensive end, this is your defensive end room, but again, he's probably going to miss the first 4 games of the season. So will Amon Hosni, so then it's going to be this guy. And then these 2 up here. These are your only other edges. These are your defensive tackles. It's really going to be between Keith Cooper and Chris Smith for that last defensive tackle spot with competing for Pat O'Connor, but Pat O'Connor's probably for sure going to win that. These are your linebackers left on the team. Turner's probably going to be out for the year, so expect him to get released with an injury settlement tomorrow. And I'm a little bit surprised Deron Gilbert's still on the team, but there you go. The cornerback, Tashawn Russell, DJ Miller, and Allen George is still there. I'm really shocked Allen George is still on the team. Tashawn Russell and DJ Miller are probably going to be competing for a practice squad spot. I would not expect Allen George to get a practice squad spot, but you never know. And then these are your safeties. Really only one safety here. And that is Lauren Strickland, because Maurice Norris is probably going to miss the first couple games of the season. And who knows, he could be out the whole entire year. He could be out a game or 2. We really don't know yet. He's probably going to get released or put on IR would be my guess. Probably going to get put on IR. So it looks like Lawrence Strickland has right now won the safety 4 job, which I do not hate. Still not a big fan of him, but now with Ian Kennelly gone, I do not hate that. And with Eric Hallett gone as well, I do not hate that. So right now, I'm not 100%. Definitely not 100%. I'll go over what my scoring ended up being by tomorrow on the 53 man, and then I'll include my practice squad score as well. But this has been the roster cuts after day one. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, the Lions have to get down to 53 on the roster by 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, and then the fully practice squad. The practice squad will fully be enabled probably by late Wednesday or early Thursday morning. But the practice squad will not begin to get enabled probably until Wednesday. I mean, last year we did get some news on Tuesday last year on cut down day that Tim Patrick and I think Allen Robinson too at the time was signing with us. Actually, I don't think it was Allen Robinson. I think it was just Tim Patrick, but we knew he was going to be on the practice squad because that was announced that Tuesday. But the practice squad doesn't become official and getting enabled until the following day on Wednesday. So those are the dates. Wishing the best to all these players that did not make the Lions roster. Hope they get back put on the practice squad or hope they get another opportunity somewhere else. Wishing the best to them and wishing the best to these other guys that are on the roster bubble. One Pride Go Lions. If I had to give a grade right now on the roster cuts, I'd give it a D-. I absolutely hate the Dan Skipper move, the Jackson Meeks move, and the Nate Lynn move. And I'm not a big fan of the Jacob Sailors move, but I understand it. So, One Pride Go Lions. There's not many more players I think you could cut that would really, not make me happy. I think some guys that would really not make me happy if you ended up cutting would be like Rocky Sin or Avonte Maddox or somebody like that. Or, I'm trying to think of another player. Maybe like you end up keeping Ronnie Bell as wide receiver 6 and cutting Dominic Levitt. I don't know, something like that. But I think for right now, I'm not going to be too bad with how the 53 is going to be set up with the players that have to be cut. But One Pride Go Lions. Do you like these moves? Grade the cut down so far in the comments down below. One Pride Go Lions.